Hey, what's up YouTubers? Lee John Blackmore here at Super Easy Guitar. Welcome to another Electric Tuesday. My apologies because I haven't done these for a couple of weeks, and purely because sometimes, guys, life just gets in the way, and to make a few videos a week, and it's pretty time consuming. But we're at that time of year. It's December. We're moving towards the holiday season. You might be thinking of buying a guitar, another guitar, a new guitar, maybe your first electric guitar, or perhaps you're thinking of buying one for a loved one, a friend, a partner, a husband, wife, daughter, whatever. Okay, and you're overwhelmed. You've looked online, you're completely overwhelmed by the amount of guitars. What the hell do I buy? Where do I start? So I'm going to give you a quick fire guide. We're just going to get into it. I'm going to give you some basics that hopefully will make you feel a bit more confident about your purchase. Okay? So number one, and the most common question I get asked all the time is, what guitar should I buy? I'm a beginner. Can you recommend some brands? Well, quite frankly, that's a very, very difficult question because I don't know what you like, and it's kind of, only you know what you like, and what's good for me is going to be different for you, okay? So the first thing to think about would be, what do I like? What artists do I like? What kind of sounds are those artists making? Do I want to be that type of guitar player as well? That's really a good place to start. For example, if you like Van Halen, do I buy a Fender Strat or do I buy a Les Paul Gibson? So we'll get into that, okay? But what I'm talking about is appeal. Does it appeal to me? Do I want to pick it up and play it? Do I look good when I play it? Does it look good in the mirror or whatever? Does it have appeal? So as soon as you've found that thing, whether it's a gold-plated guitar or whatever, just go for it and see if you can find one, and see if you can find one within your budget. However, if you're buying for someone else and you do not have a clue, you need to do a bit of investigating work and find out what kind of artists they like, or what the guitars that those artists are playing, and either or, perhaps just ask them, if it's not a big secret, and ask them and find out, and you've got a good starting point. If you own an ugly guitar and you don't like the look of it, then maybe, or you get bored of it after a couple of weeks, you're not going to want to pick it up. You're not going to want to play it. All the guitars I've owned, I always want to just pick them up, and they've often found me. It sounds kind of cliche, but they've often found me. So perhaps that'll happen to you as well. So it's easy. If you're going into a music store, find the guitar you like the look of, pick it up, and have a little go. Hopefully you've been learning songs through my videos or wherever, from a book or guitar teachers or whatever, and you can play a few things, and it's like you can actually get to grips with the guitar. You can feel the guitar. Is the neck the right size for my fingers? Can I do those awkward bar chords? Or is the action too big? Are the strings too far away from the neck? Whereas it hurts to push down. So all those things that would come into playability. However, that's quite easy to tell when you're in a music store, because if you're playing for 5-10 minutes and your fingers start to hurt, well, maybe even though I love the look of this guitar, it doesn't really work for me, so maybe I'll try something else, which is the beauty about being in a music store. You can try something else, okay? However, if you're buying online, you're not going to have that luxury. So what do? Well, in general, these days, guitars are usually pretty high spec. They're normally made by robots, in Asia or something like that, or more high-end guitars might be built in America or Mexico or whatever. But the point is that they can be super high spec for not a lot of money. So you can be rest assured, majority of the time when you buy something online, as long as you buy from a decent dealer with a reputation, they're going to be playable, they're going to be good. So, but the main thing, and I can't stress this enough, the most important thing to check if you're going to buy online, check the returns policy. Now, don't think, yeah, whatever. Not everyone has the same returns policy. You don't want to be stuck with a guitar that you cannot stand because you've ordered it online, it's turned up, and you just can't stand it. You don't like the way it feels under your fingers. You want to be able to send that guitar back if you want. I mean, obviously you want to get it right the first time, but just in case, you know, your husband's like, oh my God, I can't stand this guitar, you're going to want to have the option to send it back. So check the return policy. That's the most important thing. In general, and I am generalizing here, there are really two different camps. The most popular brands on the planet are probably Fender and Gibson. So your Fender Strat like this or like this, probably the most common ones, or perhaps the Gibson Les Paul would be the second famous. Okay, so they're your kind of two different camps, and obviously you can get things like a hybrid between the two, which would be like a PRS, or perhaps something a little bit different like a Telecaster, or if you like Steve Vai, perhaps an Ibanez, or if you're into heavy metal, maybe a Jackson. Who knows? It just really depends what you're into. But I'll quickly talk about the differences between the main guitar bodies, okay? And they don't have to be just Fender and Gibson, but you'll see the bodies are very similar. So I've obviously got here my Fender Stratocaster. So it's a fairly thin neck. And, you know, we could talk about specs of necks and this, that, and the other, but it's a fairly thin neck. It's been adjusted, and it's, you know, the strings aren't too far away from the neck, so the action's quite nice. But you have these dotted things here, okay? And they're what we call pickups, and you just have to think of these pickups as microphones. So they just pick up the sound of the guitar. And obviously, they don't do much when it's not plugged in, okay? And they're what we call single coils. So inside there's a magnet and there's a coil that wraps around and creates a microphone and picks up the sound, okay? That sound goes through the electronics, out into the guitar lead, to the amplifier, and so on. These knobs here just control how loud, and you've got a tone, which really muffly or really bright. You know, so that's all the tone does, okay? We won't go too much into that. And then we've got a switch here, which we call a pickup selector. And that just selects between the different microphones and will give you a slightly different sound. So in general, single coils, you know, they're kind of cool for like kind of blues, or, you know, maybe even like jazz or that kind of stuff. Or, yeah, definitely rock as well. It's kind of the classic rock guitar, isn't it? Like Hendrix played an upside down version and so on, okay? So they're going to give you, you know, you don't, as a beginner, you don't really need to worry about tone straight away, okay? It's not like the be all and end all, okay? What I didn't mention actually is this one has something called a tremolo system, and this bar here is a whammy bar. And for a beginner, I wouldn't say it's entirely necessary. In fact, if anything, it'll be a hindrance because it'll just put your guitar out of tune, and you'll be tuning your guitar quite a lot. However, you can take them off. They just unscrew and come off. So, and the Les Paul doesn't have that, okay? So that's, you know, and again, that just goes down to preference and the kind of stuff you're playing. And now, I don't have a Les Paul, but I have something that's very similar, which is an SG. Now, people will be going, yeah, not similar at all, but I'm talking about similar in setup. Okay, so a Les Paul will have, in general, 2 humbuckers. Okay, now, compared to the single coils, we seem to have this shiny block here, and the only reason it's shiny is because it's got a cover on it, which just makes it look nice and shiny, okay? But you see, they've still got the little dot things. So inside there are 2 single coils put together, okay? And it's just what we call a humbucker, and we've got 2 of them. Very similar setup here. We've got a selector, a pickup selector, so it just, we can turn this one on, or have them both on. And then we've just got separate volume and tone. So volume and tone for this one, and volume and tone for this one. That's it. So, and the reason they're called humbuckers is because the single coils, used to be, you know, quite noisy. They'd make hum when you plug them into an amp, like ooh. And by putting the 2 together, it would cancel out frequencies and make them a lot quieter, effectively buck in the hum. So it's an American term, really. And humbucker is just stuck. Okay, and they sound a bit fatter, a bit meatier, and probably a bit heavier. Like you think of bands like AC/DC or Black Sabbath, and so it's just got a thicker tone. You might stumble upon guitars and it says HSS. Now, all that means is humbucker, single coil, single coil. So where the guitar is here, I have 3 single coils, single coil, single coil, single coil. On a HSS, you'd have a humbucker here, a single coil and a single coil. And that just means, when you select the humbucker, it's going to sound quite fat, but then you can select the single coils and you have the kind of softer, glassier tones. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, if you like. So that's another option you can look out for on guitars, which is pretty popular. It's pretty cool as well. Some of my students use them and they sound great. Probably I should have had this at number 1. The most important thing really would be your budget. So as a beginner, you don't really need to be going out and buying guitars worth thousands of pounds. And yes, you could be saying, well, it's an investment into my future. And yes, believe me, I have had students turn up at my house with guitars worth thousands and thousands of pounds and can't really play them, but they're there to learn. So fair play, but it's not something I would recommend. Start off with something within a fairly decent budget. You don't have to go super cheap. Get something that's going to stay in tune, that's going to sound quite nice, and isn't going to break the bank at the same time. You could go second hand, but then again, you can't send back. So perhaps wait until you're a bit more experienced, you know what you're looking for, to get a second hand guitar. Okay, so which leads me on to the next subject, which is amplifiers. Yes, of course, if you're buying an electric guitar, you need something to plug it into. You need an amplifier. So save some of that budget for a decent amp, because it's no good having a super expensive guitar plugged into a super cheap amp. What is the point? It's just going to sound awful, okay? Or might not sound awful, but it could sound better, right? A lot of the tone comes from the amplifier, so keep that in mind. Try and balance it out. A good starting point would be like a Fender Champion or something like that, or a Boss Katana. They range between $100, $200 or £120 to £220 or whatever. There are tons and tons of different brands out there. Do your reviews, check them out. If you can go to the local music store, people are usually super helpful in music stores, and they're usually, in my experience, really nice as well. One last thing to mention, this is pretty important actually. So if you're buying a guitar and amplifier online, don't assume that it will come with a guitar lead. Okay, make sure you buy your extras, and don't go super cheap when it comes to guitar leads. They do wear out. It's worth spending a little bit more money. There's nothing more annoying than a crackly guitar lead, okay? So spend some money, get a nice guitar lead. I mean, you shouldn't have to spend more than £15, £20 or $25 or whatever. You shouldn't have to spend, they do get really expensive, but you don't need to spend that sort of money. Just don't avoid those cheap, thin, skinny, horrible things, okay? They won't last 5 minutes. And of course, it's always a good idea to have some spare guitar picks as well. Every guitarist loves them. Not all guitarists play with them, but get those guitar picks. And if you're buying for your son or daughter and they're going to want to be taking it out to school, to friends' houses, it's an idea to get a strap so they can hold it and play it, and a bag, a kit bag. Some of them online, some budget guitars come with kit bags. Again, you don't need to spend a lot of money. Do they need a hard case? If you're spending a lot of money on a guitar, buy a hard case. But still, it's a good idea sometimes. Just have a soft case. If I'm traveling, I usually take my guitar on the plane, so I take a soft case. Okay, if you're a beginner and you just want to take it around your friend's house to jam, get a soft case if the guitar isn't too expensive. You get the idea. So there you have it, guys. Hope you enjoyed this week's lesson. Please don't forget, hit that subscribe button if you'd like to receive my weekly updates. Don't forget to update your smartphone as well so you can receive these updates, all right? There's some links below to some merchandise I got if you would like to help me out over here, or I've set up a donation button over on my website. Any loose change you have would be massively appreciated, okay? And for those of you who've already donated and do on a regular basis, Thank you so much. I couldn't make these lessons or these videos without you guys. Thank you so much. I'll see you again the same time next week.